The Borgen Project is a national nonpartisan advocacy organization which advocates to address global poverty. But what is global poverty? Let's explore global poverty and explain the Borgen Project. Hi, I'm Hugo, and I love researching into extraordinary topics. First, let's define what global poverty means. According to a PDF report titled The Evolution of Global Poverty 1990 to 2030 from the Brookings Institute, although national poverty lines are created at the nation-state level by individual nation-states, different nation-states have different poverty lines. This led to the creation of a worldwide poverty line, which was made by the World Bank. In this, the globally accepted threshold for what is termed extreme poverty has thus become $1.90, which has been agreed to by over 183 UN member states in relation to the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. This coincides with the definitions made by non-governmental organizations like Compassion, which says on its global poverty definition page that more than 736 million people, or 1 out of every 10 people on the planet, currently live below this poverty threshold, and children, a highly vulnerable segment of society, account for more than half of the world's poorest citizens. Thus, for the purpose of this video, global poverty is defined as people living at or below $1.90, which is accepted broadly by the international community. The fact that more than 700 million people are living below $1.90 is appalling, as vulnerable populations like those living in global poverty can be taken advantage of for the purposes of earning more money. The inability to access other goods than basic goods to support themselves simply does not allow people living in global poverty to advance economically and in society, to bettering themselves and the societies they live in. This leads me to discussing global poverty's implications. Some argue that global poverty is an isolated problem in isolated parts of the world. However, it is important to note that global poverty connects to other issues in the world. For instance, according to a United Nations story titled Hunger, a National Security Threat, the world worked together to reduce extreme poverty by creating the Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs, where they expected to provide new attention to addressing food insecurity. However, the first MDG, which aimed to have worldwide hunger from 1990 to 2015, fell short, with a majority of people in developing nation states still suffering from hunger. Although the causes for this are many, one of the societal causes is due to poverty, lack of resources, climate change, disasters, political instability, and loss of livelihood opportunities. To add, according to a Borgen Project blog story titled Global Poverty and National Security, Soft Power and Prevention, poverty coincides with national security challenges. For instance, poverty grinds down civil society and weakens government institutions. Without strong governance, many people turn to armed rebel groups for services. For instance, during the civil wars in Afghanistan, many turned to extremist schools for education and to the Taliban for protection. Thus, global poverty is not an isolated problem that should be solved on its own. It connects and weaves itself into other challenges and adversities like national security and even food security worldwide. Since I mentioned the Borgen Project, or TBP, in the previous section, let's now discuss what is the Borgen Project, and why does the Borgen Project advocate for addressing global poverty. The Borgen Project, as stated in its About Us page, was founded in 2003 by Clint Borgen. In this, Mr. Borgen founded the Borgen Project after recognizing that the U.S. could do more to address global poverty during his time volunteering with refugees during the Kosovo War and genocide in the now former Yugoslavia. Although TBP was started from humble beginnings on a fishing vessel in Dutch Harbor, Alaska, TBP has now become a robust national campaign boasting volunteers in over 1,813 cities across the world. To add, there are 4 ways which TBP uses to advocate to address global poverty. In this, TBP advocates congressional leaders, mobilizes people across the world, educates the basic lobbying skills to citizens to teach them how to advocate for addressing global poverty, and finally builds awareness to address the stigmas and misconceptions associated with global poverty, as well as engage the community on TBP efforts to address global poverty. As such, according to the Borgen Project Success Tracker page, these strategies have resulted in many bills being passed through the U.S. Congress over the years, including but not limited to the Malala Yousafzai Scholarship Act, which as of this video's creation went into effect as a law 1 year ago. Although TBP was brought up from humble beginnings with an ambitious goal to address global poverty, TBP has and continues to succeed in lobbying the representatives and senators of the U.S. Congress, as well as educating and mobilizing people all over the U.S. in order to address global poverty. TBP's ambitions and its actions, which resulted in the organization making a growing impact in advocating for legislation to address extreme poverty worldwide, has shown the organization's incredible determination to fact-check the stigmas behind global poverty while constructively building bridges to facilitate change in addressing global poverty. Now that I have talked about TBP, let's see what they advocate for. According to TBP's legislation page, TBP advocates for many bills. One of the important bills TBP advocates for is the International Affairs Budget, which, as stated in the Budget Summaries PDF, supports many diplomatic and development programs across the world, including but not limited to staffing all U.S. embassies overseas, providing emergency responses to natural disasters, and even providing good governance assistance to new democracies. Likewise, TBP advocates for many other bills, like the MINDS Act, which aims to invest into mental health programs across the world, including with helping children's well-being, and even the Global Malnutrition Prevention and Treatment Act, which focuses on addressing world hunger. I can go on and on about the bills TBP advocates for, but due to time, I would only encourage you to check out TBP's legislation page in the description below. Nonetheless, this itinerary of bills TBP advocates for represents the organization's depth and unfailing commitment to address global poverty. TBP's diverse selection of bills it advocates for showcases the many ways people can advocate to address global poverty through bills like the MINDS Act, which focuses on mental health, or through other bills like the International Affairs Budget, which focuses on a broad range of priorities across the world. So, how do you support TBP? There are many ways to support TBP. For instance, the Borgen Project website, 30 Ways to Help, says that you can support TBP in many ways. In this, you can email and or call your congressional leaders to support TBP, spread awareness of TBP and its efforts, and even share videos like this one across social media in order to educate and mobilize others on TBP. Thus, there are a variety of ways to support TBP and advocate to address global poverty. So to recap, I first defined the term global poverty with the internationally accepted threshold of $1.90 of the US currency, which is absolutely appalling as people living in global poverty aren't able to advance economically to improve themselves and their society, as they would only be able to buy basic goods. This led me to discussing global poverty's implications, which I found were many. For example, I discovered how global poverty is not an isolated problem in the world, as it connects with other issues like national security and world hunger. I then discussed the Borgen Project, where I found TBP's ambitions and actions have resulted in the organization having a growing impact in the world by advocating for bills like the Malala Yousafzai Scholarship Act, as well as educate and mobilize people to filter facts from fiction and facilitate change to address global poverty. This led me to discussing global poverty's implications, which I found were many. In this, I talked about the bills TBP advocates for, where I discovered that TBP advocates for a variety of bills, like the Mines Act for addressing mental health and the International Affairs Budget, which focuses on a variety of topics. I finally settled on the question of how to support TBP, where I uncovered that there are a variety of ways to support TBP and advocate to address global poverty. To illustrate, you can email and or call your congressional leaders to support TBP, and even share this video to bring more awareness of TBP and global poverty. So in all, global poverty isn't a topic that can simply be put down into a few words, and is, along with the ways to address it, are more complex and engaging than it may seem. Thank you for watching my video, and merci et à bientôt.